This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, here on October the 17th, 2022. And folks, we have an awesome cinematographer on the show with us today. And I happened to see one of his movies 4 times in the theater this year. And very, very excited to have him on here, folks. I give you the absolutely awesome Eliot Rocket. How do you do, Eliot?
Thank you. I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited and very thankful that you're so into the movies.
You know what? You got a much more interesting background than me. My apartment's all cluttered because my cat
Oh,
will not clean up after me.
uh-huh.
Yeah, he sleeps
We
a
have
lot,
a
but yeah,
Our house is kind of an interesting work in progress all the time. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? It's wonderful to have you on here today, and like I said, I got a couple of your movies here. I got Axe, and I got House of the Devil,
Mm,
which frankly, it wasn't until I saw X that I looked up more of Ty West's movies, and
hmm.
that was how I come to see House of the Devil.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw Pearl in the theater this year, and I loved that too. Fortunately, Pearl was not there long enough in our theater for me to go see it 4 times, but I'm certainly hoping that the Academy is smart enough to nominate Mia Goth for an Oscar, because she
Mm.
certainly deserves it. But but nonetheless, before we get into these movies in detail, I want to get a little bit of your background and what led you to getting into the business.
Um, I'm sorry, I'm having a problem with my internet, and you froze up for a sec. I don't know why. Um,
I could see you fine.
Yeah, you froze, and I missed after you said that about Mia. Um, okay, well, let's just continue on, and hopefully
Well,
it won't.
what I referred to was that I wanted to get a little bit of your background and what led you to getting into the business.
Well, I was one of those people that went to film school originally.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I got my master's degree at NYU back a lot number of years ago, and then I just kind of went on and shot things after that. One of the short films that I shot at when I was a student at NYU went on to win the best short film prize at Sundance in like 1994 or something like that, and that kind of kicked off a sort of ongoing thing, doing little independent movies for a number of years. And then at the same time, I started shooting music videos around that same time, and that kind of I ended up moving from New York to San Francisco and kind of had this parallel track of like doing music videos and some corporate work in San Francisco, and then a couple of independent features basically every year for a lot of years, really, and then eventually moved down to Los Angeles and kind of just continued on, and then sort of moved into television about 10 years ago, just because there was some opportunities. I got on that show Grimm. I live in Portland now, and that was shooting here, and I ended up shooting that for 6 years, I think, like 54 episodes of it or something. And then, so it's just kind of gone on since then. So I've sort of always just been a director of photography. I dabbled a little bit in directing with the music video thing, but it's basically just been shooting stuff, from the get-go.
It's funny you mentioned music video, and like I turned 50 this year, and I remember when MTV started and
Hmm.
some of the videos. I should ask this random question: do you have a favorite music video? Now, for
Oh.
me, I had Tony Basil on here in 2020, and I love "Oh Mickey."
Uh-huh.
That
Sure.
was that was probably my favorite music video ever, and I was so honored to have her on here.
Oh man, I mean, there's so many that were so amazing, especially back in the 90s when, people they were just making mountains of them.
Hmm.
And like, that show 120 Minutes that was on MTV. um, back then, that was kind of where the music videos we were making would always end up. And boy, I don't know if I could say that I have a favorite. I mean, it just sort of, there was a period of time there in the mid 90s, I guess it was, that, there was just like all kinds of really good stuff going on. And then it kind of evaporated after that, I feel like, um, and then, it is what it is today, but it sort of had its heyday back then.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Well, how many movies have you did with Ty West? Because I know you've done a few more than the two that I have got here. And how did you come to meet him?
Ty and I think Pearl was the fifth movie I've shot for Ty. And Ty and I originally met, it was actually through connections in New York. I had shot a movie called Liberty Kid for a woman named Eliot Rocket, that was one of the producers on it was Larry Fessenden of Glass Eye Pix. And Larry was connected with Ty around that same time, and had been involved in like a bunch of his very, very early movies, like The Roost and Triggerman and stuff. And it was kind of through that connection that I think maybe Larry recommended me, or Ilya recommended me to Larry, and Larry recommended me to Ty. I don't know, but for the Cabin Fever sequel that he did, and that was the first thing we ended up doing together. I remember I met with him in his living room in Los Angeles before that, and we got along. It was great. He seemed like a nice guy. He seemed interesting. The script for that particular movie, which he didn't write, was a little dubious, maybe. But he ended up hiring me, and we went on. We had a really good time making that movie. It was in North Carolina and Wilmington, and it was just crazy, the whole thing. But in the end, for him, certainly, it turned out to be a very kind of unpleasant experience, I guess, and he was super unhappy with the movie, and it largely derived from, I think, the fact of what the script was. And then we went on to make House of the Devil, uh, and then The Innkeepers, and then I was on, as I said before, I was on Grimm for 6 years, and so I wasn't involved in making The Sacrament or Valley of Violence. Although I was in contact with him and talked a lot about those experiences and what was going on with all of that. And then, and then a strange thing came up a few years ago, where he was doing a couple of episodes for a television show for Netflix, and they needed a director of photography for one of them. So I came on and did that with him. And then X and Pearl happened. And, now we're supposed to be doing the third one, the
Oh,
sequel,
I so hope so.
the sequel to X. Yeah, I mean, it's all in the works. It's heading forward. I haven't heard any news about it for a while, but sometime early next year we're supposed to get started on that. So,
Oh, awesome.
mhm.
Awesome. I haven't seen The Innkeepers. I gotta
Mm.
confess to that. And I haven't seen Cabin Fever 2 either, but I have seen House of the Devil. I do have a funny story to tell you about Pearl,
Mhm.
because I felt like I was being punked. Um,
Uh-huh.
you know how at the end of X they showed the advertisement for Pearl, the trailer for
Hmm.
Pearl.
Yeah.
Um, we didn't get that in our theater.
Oh, really?
I had to go online to see the Pearl trailer. But I
Hmm.
remember when Pearl came out, there was talks about Maxine, and I went online. I was like, "Oh, nice! They're gonna do another one. Nice, more Mia Goth."
Uh-huh.
And I went and saw Pearl in the theater, and Pearl ends, and people start standing up, and I say, "Hey, there's gonna be a post-credit scene." And people like, "Oh, thanks," and people sit down, and movie comes, the credits are done, screen goes to black. Nothing. People look back at me, we're like laughing. I'm like, Oh, I was walking out in the parking lot. There were people looking at me, and I'm sorry, guys. It was on like they were all good sports about it, you know. They thought it was
Uh-huh.
funny, and I felt like I'd just been played.
I don't know, there is that little thing that they've released for Maxine. It's like that helicopter shot. It looks like it
Yep.
started, from a VHS thing. The helicopter comes over to the Hollywood sign, but it says Maxine. Um, yeah, but I don't know if they included that in any of the theater show. I
Oh,
think that might have come out later, but I'm kind of unaware of all of that end of things.
well, I saw that Maxine clip there with the Hollywood sign, and I was like, I got to admit, in retrospect, I kind of laugh about it now, and people in the parking lot were pretty cool. What was cool is a lot of them hadn't seen X.
Oh, really? That's
So,
interesting.
I got to, send people over to that movie as well.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
so I had conversation with some strangers and telling them how I felt punked. I got
Well, it's
them all
interesting because
I'll sit there to wait there, nothing.
uh-huh. You don't really need to see the movies in any particular order. You know
Nope.
what I mean? Like you could see Pearl first, you could see X first. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. Um, I think Maxine, you'll probably have wanted to see the other two movies prior to seeing
Yeah.
Maxine. Although I've read the script so far, and it'll be again a standalone thing. It won't be absolute, but it'll be one of those things that it'll be enhanced certainly if you're aware of the rest of the movies.
I am looking forward to Maxine. I will so be there for that, you know?
Great, great.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, but yeah, I haven't seen The Innkeepers, I got to admit. But House of the Devil, now I come familiar with that after X this
Hmm.
year, because I was like, gee, what else has Ty West done, And a lot of people really enjoyed House of the Devil.
Hmm.
And I watched it or actually I ordered this without watching it.
Uh-huh.
I figured, well, I really enjoyed X. I saw it 4 times in the theater. I'll take everybody's word for it. And first off, I really enjoyed this, but I mean, for a premise that has been done to death,
Hmm.
it's Ty West still makes it look fresh,
Hmm.
and a lot of that too is how you make the films look.
Oh,
And boy, you really there's something to be said about how his films look through what you do with them, you know? Do you have
uh-huh.
a particular approach when, you go into cinematography?
Well, House of the Devil certainly and X both. We really took the approach that like the movie itself, along with being a period piece internally, that the film itself, the movie itself, should sort of feel like like a actual artifact of that time.
Mhm.
And in both those on both those projects, I personally took the approach. Um, Pretty much of just using sort of the equipment that would have been available around the time when that stuff was made, like um, yeah, I cheated a little bit on X. There was a few modern lighting equipment fixtures, but for the most part, I kind of sat back and went like, well, how are we going to make it look like it would have looked had it been made then? Well, let's start by using things they used, although on X, of course, we shot digitally on the Sony Venice, but House of the Devil was 16 millimeter film.
Mhm.
Um, and I think a lot of things that get done as period pieces, uh, the photography of them doesn't really commit to being of the era of the thing. And you can't always do that. Like, of course, Pearl is like a little bit of that example, but it's like Pearl sort of leans into more of like a 1930s Technicolor kind of thing because, it's like 1918, there weren't really any movies to
Mhm.
emulate. But there's also the thing of like cinematography and the way filmed media looks is is to some degree kind of very fashion oriented. Like there are trends in it. There are things that people do that are of the moment. You know, there are sort of techniques and color schemes and things that become popular within the industry that sort of drive certain things. And with like House of the Devil and certainly X and in Pearl, we didn't really like go for any of that. We just sort of said, hey, you know, let's commit to doing this and making it be like it would be, you know, at that time, or let's very thoroughly commit to this sort of Technicolor look. And, you know, also with X and Pearl, there's a lot to be said for the work of Tom Hammock, our production designer, you know, and being very, very rigid and tight with like the color schemes and, you know, what we're putting in front of the camera to take a picture of, you know, because that has a big influence on it, you know. But really, from a cinematography standpoint, it's more a matter, at least for me, it was more a matter of like coming to grips with what the aesthetic is, and then just committing to it and trying to do it, you know.
I love the house in House of the Devil. You know, you get a nice big house. Now, I don't know how much of that was a set or
None
how
of it.
much.
It was all
No,
shot in
oh,
yeah, it was all a house.
beautiful,
Hmm.
beautiful. I gotta say, you know, like you get a nice big house in a horror movie, endless possibilities, you know, and it was wonderful seeing Mary Warrenov, and it's been so long, you know, Miss Togar from Rock and Roll High School.
Uh-huh.
Yep, seeing Mary Warrenov in this, and I'd never seen. I'm going to mispronounce her name. J- Jocelyn Donahue. Is that how you pronounce?
Jocelyn
Jocelyn.
Donahue.
I
Yeah.
really liked her in this. You know.
Yeah, she was great for
Yep.
sure. I ran into her at the premiere after party at for X, just
Hmm.
whatever it was earlier this year. I hadn't seen her for many, many years. And you know, she's still working actor, like doing her thing in LA, you know.
Hmm. I really liked her in this, you know, and you're really rooting for her. But I'm going to tell you, watching her go through that house, that creepy house, that
Hmm.
must have provided, especially for you, endless possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's a long time ago to remember all of the way that movie went down when we were making it. It on the face of it, when you read the script, it seemed like it was going to be this very easy movie to make because it was basically 90% of it was just a girl walking around in a house, you know.
Hmm.
But I do remember the feeling of like, oh my God, this is way more work and way harder than it would seem to be, you know.
Hmm.
Um, you know, part of that was also was like the stakes were real high for Ty at that time, you know, having you know, come off of the cabin fever thing and stuff. So, um, but you know, the whole doing something with somebody walking around a house for that long of a period of time, you know, that will still retain people's interest is a feat, you know. Um, I think that's, you know, really where Ty's reputation for the slow burn came in, you know.
Yeah, I love slow burn horror movies. I like to
Hmm.
see character development. I like to be able to identify, get involved mentally with what's going on. And like I said, I loved X. And like I said, I turned 50 this year. You know, back in July, I turned 50. And I know this because I got a thing in the mail that says, "Hey, you were thinking about your colonoscopy yet?" I'm like,
Yeah.
gee, what a way to celebrate. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
But X has often been said to be a cross between Boogie Nights and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I think is an interesting little
Yeah, that's a
connection.
fair assessment, I think. You know, I mean, the first half of X is really kind of this, like, you know, interpersonal drama about like, you know, RJ's relationship with, uh, what's her face, you know,
Jenna
uh, Jenna
Ortega,
Ortega. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, it's really just sort of this like kind of humorous, like sexy movie about like the difficulties of like, you know, navigating that sort of a thing. And, you know, it takes a left turn in front of the van later. But yeah,
Oh
um,
man, I love this movie, and it did look like 1979 when
mhm,
the story takes place. Bro,
mhm.
congratulations on this, man. I mean,
Oh, thanks.
this was great. Um, Easily my favorite movie so far this year.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. And I gotta say, Jenna Ortega, I did not know who she was last year.
Mhm,
This year, she was in the new Scream.
mhm,
And all the people are talking about Nev Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette. Fine performers, but the new Scream comes out. Jenna Ortega is all the talk.
mhm. Yeah, she's
She
amazing.
she stole the movie.
Yeah, I mean,
On
and
the Yeah,
I think she's only like 19 years old or something.
yeah,
But she's been working as an actor since she was real little, I think, um,
yeah.
and she has a great attitude. She would come like that whole thing where her hand gets smashed as she reaches through the door, she'd break into the like, wow, screaming and crying, and my hand's been smashing it, and then, cut, and then she'd just be, it would just turn on a dime. She'd just be laughing and chatting with people, and then like camera come back on, and just boom, she's right there in it again. And yeah, she just has kind of like this crazy magnetism that's just really remarkable. Yeah, she was great. The whole cast in X was really great, and that's the thing that ties, real good with, like, he's very particular. He has a very clear idea in his head about like, oh, this character is this kind of person. Like Wayne is a good example. A lot of people would have read the script or did read the script and kind of think of Wayne as like this kind of sleazy gold chains kind of like greaser dude. And
I
Ty's like,
thought
no,
of
this.
Matthew McConaughey when I
Mhm.
watched him in that Martin Henderson. Put me
Yeah.
so much in mind of Matthew McConaughey.
Hmm. Yeah, and Ty was like, Wayne is not, he's an entrepreneur and a businessman, and he's like upfront about what he's trying to do, and he's not pulling some scam on anybody. He's just trying to do what he does, and he's just kind of that like wheeler dealer guy that like is out there, just trying to get things done. And it's kind of like it in some ways. If you had read the script beforehand, you maybe wouldn't have expected the character to have been played that way. But Ty was very clear about it and went out, and Martin was amazing. It's like you got Martin and he was like, oh man, this guy is that guy. Like he can just do this. It's
Hmm.
great.
Well, Jenna Ortega went from Scream to doing Studio 666, where she appears in it very briefly, but very effectively, with, oh, I'm trying to think of the band.
I'm not familiar with it, but
Studio 666. Just a minute. I'm going to bring it up here because she appears in it briefly as a bandmate that meets her grisly end right in the opening. And oh, Dave Grohl, he's a star in it.
oh,
Yep,
uh-huh.
yep. So him and oh, his band is not coming to mind right now, but nonetheless, and I'm gonna kick myself for not remembering. Oh, the Foo Fighters, the
Yeah,
Foo Fighters. There you
yes.
go.
The
Yeah, because
post
they play,
Nirvana.
yeah, they
Hmm.
play themselves in the movie, and they're not actors. It's pretty clear.
Hmm.
But Jenna appears in that, and then Jenna appears in X. Now, I want to point out a scene in particular that really stood out for Jenna.
Hmm.
The scene where she goes into the basement to
Hmm.
get that flashlight, and then she catches sight of something in the basement. I love watching her face change.
Hmm.
It's like she catches it,
Yeah.
and you can see it registering and the realization coming in as her face changes to fear and terror. I don't think I've seen that much before.
Uh-huh.
She doesn't see it and just scream. You could see a little process going on there.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I gotta say, that stood out to me with Jenna Ortega.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, she's a great actor. there's no
Hmm.
doubt about it, and she's got a good long career ahead of her. I'm sure there's going to be amazing stuff for
I
sure.
hope so. I hope so. And Brittany Snow in this,
Hmm.
after Pitch Perfect, loved her in Pitch Perfect. No, she got brought in. Kid Cudi brought into
Hmm.
this, and of course we have Mia Goth. And I've seen Mia Goth before. She was in the Suspiria reboot and Cure for Wellness. But I'm gonna tell you something. Mia Goth in this, I gotta say, I really kind of turned on Scream after seeing this movie, and I'll tell you why.
Hmm.
In Scream, Jamie Kennedy gets up there and he talks to everybody about the rules of horror movies.
Uh-huh.
Don't have sex. Don't do drugs. Don't get naked. Don't this. Don't that. I think I'm the only one that I'm aware of that noticed that Mia Goth's Maxine broke every single one of those rules.
Uh-huh.
The
Yeah.
first time she's on screen, she's snorting a line of cocaine. She
Uh-huh.
gets naked, she has sex, and she drives off flipping the bird. And I was like clapping my hand. Not that I applaud the behavior, but she beat the rules. I consider her Maxine one of the greatest final girls.
Uh-huh.
And of course, Mia Goth was in both X and Pearl, and I so hope that they're smart and give her an Oscar nomination for Pearl because boy, what a brilliant performance.
Mm. Well, the whole movie just hinges on her for sure. I mean, there's like she's in almost every. I think she might be in every single scene in Pearl. I'm not sure. Yeah.
What is she like? Talk about
Oh, she's wonderful. I mean, she's a very committed actor.
oh
Like,
yeah.
um, committed works hard and is like a very charming and pleasant human being to be around.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know what more I could really say. Like, wonderful person to work with for sure.
She was
Uh,
involved also in the writing of Pearl. Now, is she involved in the writing of Maxine?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah. Um,
Okay. Well, like I said, the fact that this, and I've seen movies screw this up before, you
mhm,
know. If you lived in a particular time, obviously wasn't around in 1918, but I was
mm,
around in 1979 when this was set. I've seen movies screw up stuff like this, but I love it when a movie captures it. Boogie Nights captured the 70s. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas captured the 70s. They got the look, everything down.
mhm,
This one here looked like it was shot in 1979.
mhm. Yeah, yeah.
So, what was the biggest challenge for you in making X?
Well, I would have to say in the actual physical making of it, when we're out there shooting it, there were so many nights that we were working. Like it was, I think, 3 solid weeks of nights from like sundown to sunup, and it was the weather was not cooperating. It was like it would start raining, dump. This was in New Zealand, and um, it was rainy and wet, and most of that film was shot on location at the farm. For Pearl, we built a number of sets that mimic the interior of the farm and did a bunch of it on stage. But for X, we were out there, and just really the physical conditions were what was the most difficult thing to deal with. Like, it was cold and wet, and there wasn't really anywhere to go to be like comfortable, like, I
Hmm.
mean, we just had the farm and the entire farm was a set, so there wasn't like there was another building that anybody could go off and hang out in or something. There was like pop-up tents with equipment under them out in the rain outside of the bunkhouse or whatever, and you just had to hang out. People were in the midst of it in the rain and stuff. The bunkhouse, the back half of it was raised up about 4 feet off of the ground, and people just huddled underneath the floor of the bunkhouse to kind of stay dry and hang with it. And then because we were using all this equipment from back in the day that came off of the shelves of the rental house, very deep and dusty and hadn't been used for a long time, that there was a number of issues with equipment failing us and stuff like that. That was also a bit of a challenge for me, but we got through it.
You know what? I love the location, and I really like that house or that unit that the crew were staying in there, you know?
Hmm.
Again,
Yeah.
like House of the Devil, it looks small, and then you get inside it, and it's interesting some of the corridors in it,
Hmm.
and whatnot. So, but anyway, you have several areas in this movie that stand out in terms of your work in the film. Do you have a favorite thing you're most proud of in X?
You know, I don't know that I would say that I have a favorite single thing, but I do feel like what we achieved in terms of filmmaking was
Mhm.
commendable. Like, and that's kind of, I guess, what I'm the most proud of is like the fact of how the whole movie comes together very solidly as one consistent, organic, working thing, and a lot of that is, the shots, the lighting for me, and that's, it all worked really, really well, and there's a lot of really, I mean, for lack of a better word, there's a lot of really fun camera work in X. There's a lot of things that are like, this is a great shot, um, there's things like when Wayne is walking in the barn trying to find RJ, and he's talking about women and blah blah blah, and he's
Mhm.
all that stuff, and then the camera just drops down on its own to the nail and the piece of wood in the foreground, and you just watch him walk right up to it. I reference that periodically because it's like such a complete, like, it's such a tie thing to do. Like, and when we did the very first movie, the Cabin Fever 2, there was a thing where at the very beginning of the movie, a victim of the sickness is stumbling out of the woods, and he's all grotesque, and he stumbles onto this little two-lane road out in the country, and you see way back in the distance, you see this school bus heading down the road, and you just watch as, like, he stumbles and the school bus gets closer and closer and closer, and then finally it just hits him and he explodes in a explosion of goo. And it's the same thing with the camera coming down and finding the nail in the foreground, and then you just watch Martin just walk up and step on it. You just see it coming from such a long ways away, which I think, this thing like that are great. And I enjoyed stuff like um yeah, just weird little things where, like, when the pitchfork goes into the through the hole
Oh,
and into
that was interesting.
yeah, we used this probe lens that's like an inch in diameter and about 14 inches long. We stuck it in, it can get in super close, and so we stuck it in right up next to his eyeball and then pulled it away real fast, and then it runs in reverse in the movie. Things like that. It was just like there was a lot of fun things to do.
One thing that stood out to me was RJ's final moments in the film. Number 1, it was interesting hearing "Don't Fear the Reaper," an interesting
Uh-huh.
little, tie into John Carpenter's Halloween because "Don't Fear the Reaper" plays in that.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, and, but I love the moment where Pearl is getting into her little trance, doing the little dance, and you hear some different kind of music, and she just getting lost in her little world, and then it goes back to reality, and you hear "Don't Fear the Reaper," you
Uh-huh.
know?
Uh-huh.
Some great again, Mia Goth. I'm gonna be frank, I did not know that was her when I first saw
Oh,
that.
really? Uh-huh.
I had
Uh-huh.
this it wasn't until the second time I saw the movie that I even realized that was her. Um, do
Yeah.
you know why she was chosen to play 2 roles in that?
You know, I I gotta remember back when all that, and I wasn't privy to everything that went on, but I know that I remember that the studio had some other ideas of people they were thinking that should be cast in at least a Maxine role.
Mm-hmm.
But Ty was very adamant that he wanted Mia. From what I remember, like he didn't really have anybody else he really wanted. He was like, I want this girl Mia Goth. She's amazing, right?
Yep.
And then at some point, and I don't, it was after she was cast or during that process that like I remember getting a phone call from Ty and he's like, we're gonna do this. It's gonna be amazing. We're gonna have Mia play both Maxine and Pearl, and we'll just do prosthetics on her, and she'll be this, super old lady also. And I was like, whoa, that's gonna be crazy. And it was kind of just that. I don't know that I don't recall it being something that was um, like planned from the get-go. It was something that
It
kind
was
of came along.
worked.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that was an enormous amount of work too, because it's, to have the one person playing two roles is, one thing, like if you're going to have them be identical twins or something, but like because getting into the makeup to be Pearl was a 6 hour plus affair. Um, Anytime we did a scene that had both Maxine and Pearl in it, we had to do them on different days. Like we had to do one half of the scene, where Mia is Maxine, and then a day later or 2 days later, whatever it was scheduled, we'd have to go back and do the other half of the scene where Mia played Pearl. And then we had a couple body doubles and stuff that we could use for foreground elements, like over the shoulders and stuff like this. But
Like
there was,
in the bedroom scene where,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. She must have been a very sound sleeper, a deep sleeper, But
Yeah,
yeah, that was pulled off so seamlessly,
yeah. That was kind of a
Yeah.
complicated one. Yeah, yeah. Because that also had to be done in over 2 different days, so everything had to be maintained to look exactly the same for the plates, for the backgrounds and the foregrounds, and yeah, that was um, yeah. There was some challenges there.
And we got to talk about, of course, the alligator, because
Oh,
again, you got that great shot overhead of Maxine in the water.
hmm.
I gotta say, you talk about suspense. I mean, this girl must have had a horseshoe up her ass during that scene. A lucky horseshoe, because I'm gonna tell you, I wasn't the only one in the audience thinking that she was about to go,
Uh-huh.
you
Yeah, for
know?
sure.
And she's completely unaware
Hmm.
that she almost was a toast right there.
Yeah.
But that was great stuff too. Do you remember much about the alligator, or what was
It
the
was
story behind that?
we had several different alligator puppets, for lack of a better word, I guess. Um, they were made. We had um, that was a piece that was just the head with the working jaws that kind of had
Mhm.
this cowl that came out the back that a stunt person could be inside and work the jaws for when it bit things. And then we had a piece that was like essentially an alligator cut in half the long way, so it was just the top half that could be pulled through the water, and that's what's in that shot. And that had an articulated tail that had these fins in the water down below it. So when you pulled it through the water, it made the tail go like as if the tail was pushing it, you know?
Okay.
So for that shot, there was a rig that had like pulleys and a cable under the water that attached to the alligator that pulled it along through, on a line through the pond right there. So we could do that. And then we had another like just a close-up alligator head piece, I think it was, that like when you see the alligator in the reeds and its eyes blink, that was just a little floating prop head with little
Oh,
black eyes.
wow.
And then the eyes were just animated with VFX. So most of it was just practical, like, which again kind of harkens back to doing the movie in a way that like it would have been done in
Yeah.
1969, and not relying on a bunch of VFX and stuff. So and that kind of goes throughout the whole entire movie. Most everything in the movie were practical gags. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
There's a little bit of VFX work here and there, and there's some like things in backgrounds and stuff like that. Like when the camera rises up from the strip club and you see off in the distance all the oil refineries of Houston and that sort of thing. None of that obviously existed because we were in New Zealand in Wellington. It was like the bay and little buildings and stuff. So there's things like that that VFX helped out with. But contrary to like a lot of the ways things are done now, most of the gags and the effects and stuff were practical things.
You know what? Until you spoke to me now, I had no idea that wasn't a real alligator.
Oh, really? Well,
I
that's
had no
cool.
idea. Like, I was sitting there, how did they do that? Because, certain animals can be tamed, but I don't know how easy you can tame an alligator, you
No, I
know?
don't think that's an option. Yeah.
It's like, how did they do that? You got Mia in that water. How do you do Wow, I had no idea. I actually thought it was a real alligator.
Oh, wow. No, no, it was those were all props. Uh-huh. I mean,
Oh,
I don't.
brilliant.
Yeah. It was like there was and there was some reworking of that alligator in between X and Pearl because there was like particularly the one that floated and the tail went like the depth that it floated to and this sort of thing, was a real touchy sort of thing and but yeah, they were props. Uh-huh.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
obviously, when there's a character devoured by the alligator, obviously they didn't devour a real human being, but still,
Uh-huh.
um, obviously stuff there would have to be practical. But I had no idea that that was a prop. I had no idea. Wow, I learned something today in this movie.
There you go.
There you go. Well, let's talk about Pearl because I gotta say, Mia Goth to me gives arguably probably the best performance I've seen this year, at least
Mhm.
for an actress, you know? I mean,
Uh-huh.
she was brilliant in this, and I'm gonna tell you, you must have had a field day with this movie because it plays like a horror film version of a Disney film, and I
Yeah.
often heard Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz being, uh, tagged with this film, and, of course, set in 1918, so Birth of a Nation came out in 1915. That was, I believe, the
Hmm.
first feature-length film.
Uh-huh.
So, talkies or not talkies would start in 1927 with The Jazz Singer, but motion pictures were just getting into being lengthy at the
Hmm.
time this movie is set. Now this must have been a field day for you doing Pearl now, or maybe it was excruciating. I don't know. Talk about the challenges and the rewards of doing this movie and having it look the way it does.
Well, it was interesting because, we were down there in New Zealand and the word came that okay, we're going to make the other movie too, right? But we were only going to have this very limited period of time in between the two movies to prep it. And the script had been around and written and we'd been working on it. Ty and I had been talking about it a lot and what it was going to be and how it was going to look and that sort of thing. And um and so we had been sort of gathering a lot of reference material. And actually, for me, Gone with the Wind was a big one. The way I noticed, like you look at Gone with the Wind, and people are
Mhm.
standing in these rooms, and wherever there's a window, there's this always this giant light and shadows of the window frame on the wall or whatever. Even if it kind of didn't make any sense, and I was like, I'm going to do that. So there's those sort of things, like a lot of kind of very artificial sort of conceptually just aesthetic choices that are like not based in reality at all in terms of that movie. And the heavy saturated colors and the very sort of what's the word for it, like almost contrived lighting, especially at night, um, was just sort of like as whereas X was super grounded in like, okay, this movie has real solid references in the like late 70s that we can look at. We're going to make it look like this. Pearl was more like, okay, we're going to do this other thing, and it's not really super specifically one of these things or another, but it's kind of an, it has all these things you're saying, like Disney and Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind and all that was sort of like in the mix. And so, when you undertake something like that, you're kind of stepping out into a world of like, okay, I have to make these aesthetic decisions that hopefully are going to be consistent and are going to be work and are going to work. And in terms of that, it was like, I don't know that anybody has done like what purports to be a horror movie with that kind of pastiche. It's like it's totally running counter visually to what the content is. And so on some level, it was just, as I would say, if you're going to get wet, you might as well go swimming. And so, we just go for it, and like, let's just go for it and see what happens. And it seems like a good idea, but like, we can't say, oh, we're doing this thing like those people did that was very successful. We were just like, no, we're just going to do this thing that's like, it's kind of whacked and out there, and it seems like it'll be interesting. And in the end, it was. So I guess it succeeded. I don't know.
Oh, wow. The film looks great,
Oh, thank you.
and I know a lot of people saw this, didn't see X. So I ended up introducing, and you don't have to necessarily see X first,
Hmm.
but I love the fact though that you see something out of Mia Goth in this movie that's totally different too. Like for example, in the beginning of the movie where she's in the barn talking to the animals.
Hmm.
Very Disney-like. You
Yeah,
almost expect her to break into a song, you
I know
know?
the movie could have been a musical very easily, I think. And I think had we had more time, that kind of was like something that was floated a little bit here and there, but it was like, oh, there's no way, there's not just not enough time to compose a
Oh, it would
song.
have been brilliant, wouldn't
Yeah, it would have been amazing.
it?
Yeah.
You know? And there was some stuff with her, that long dialogue scene,
Hmm.
and there was a part in the movie that holds right on her face, watching her react. And I can't even bring the words to describe that, but
Yeah.
Mia doing that and staying on camera all that time shows just how good she is, There was a lot of great stylistic choices in this movie.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was, it was it, it was done quickly and with less money actually than X, uh, but it wasn't done like as a throwaway on any level. Like as much thought, as much effort, as much work went, if not more, went into Pearl than X. You know what I mean? It's like just the circumstances were on a production level somewhat difficult, just because the resources were thinner. But and again, Tom Hammock, our production designer, to his credit, like did amazing work. Like we were doing period 1918 Texas in a little town outside called Wanganui, New Zealand, in 2021. It's like that's for like very little money, and he made it work really well.
Well,
He's
I'm going to tell you, I just did a convention in Toronto, and during that time, I booked an interview, and I did it with Matthew Sunderland, who played Pearl's
oh
father in the movie.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I had a great chat with him. Another guy did a brilliant job of what looks to be a throwaway role, and the
yeah.
stuff he did with his eyes in that movie.
Yeah, no, that was so remarkable because I thought like, or hadn't really given much thought to the role, when we started shooting. It was like, okay, this guy's just going to be in a wheelchair the whole time and not say anything the entire movie or do anything the entire movie. And he knocked it out of the park, man. He was brilliant. Like I was blown away by that guy, and it's funny because I don't know that I ever even really had any conversations with him, or he was kind of around. He was quiet. He was like, there on set, and then he would disappear, go back to trailer, whatever. But oh my word, he just did a fantastic job with that, I thought.
Yeah, I had him on here a couple weeks ago. I was supposed to have him on before I went to Toronto, but he was shooting another film, and and I rescheduled him. I had no problems with that, And I didn't know this. I learned that New Zealand was 14 hours ahead of me, thanks to
Oh,
one of my coworkers
uh-huh.
letting me know that. You know, I had no idea, but he was interesting to talk to, and I know Tandy Wright is from there as well. I haven't had Tandy on here. I don't know how to get in touch with her, but nonetheless, Ty made great use of the talent there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the things that started happening because, with COVID and the restrictions getting into New Zealand at that time, um, the casting, like bringing cast from outside the window of opportunity of that closed very quickly, and you know, Ty cast a lot of the movie, with people in New Zealand, and they have, of course, remarkable actors there, just like anywhere. They've got a substantial film and television business and industry going on down there, so it supports that. Um, but yeah, they turned out to be great. And Tandy was, she was our intimacy coordinator on X. Like, she wasn't introduced to our world as an actor per se, but she and Ty talked about it, and then she did an audition for Ty that just blew him away, and he was like, okay, she's gonna be the mom. She's gonna be Ruth. It's like, and she, also remarkable, like totally remarkable performance.
You know what? I looked her up, when I was trying to reach out to her, and I was like, "Oh my goodness," because I'd never seen her before. You see her in Pearl as this very strict mom. She's actually very stunning.
Hmm.
I was like, "Oh my goodness," she's kind of pulling what Mia Goth did with Pearl and X.
Hmm.
They made her look older than she was, and yeah, it's kind of interesting to see that.
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
No,
from
a little cast and like a bunch of really remarkable actors. The woman, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, who played the sister-in-law, who gets it in the end. Um, I'm spacing on her name right now, but she
just a
was also,
second, I'm going to
wasn't that
bring
big of a
her
role,
up.
but she, you know, home run for her too.
I'll bring her up. Emma Jenkins,
Yeah, yeah,
Pearl. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, she was great in the movie too. I loved her reactions upon hearing the story.
Hmm. Yeah,
When people in the audience were starting to laugh whenever the story is done, and just watching her process that,
yeah. She's
like,
like, oh my. Uh-huh.
time for me to leave, you know.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Um, it kind of makes me wonder, if the sister-in-law gets killed off, why in the hell does Howard stay with her?
Yeah, you got to wonder a little bit about Howard, right? Uh-huh.
You know what? There's kind of like, I gotta wonder if Ty's gonna do this. You could kind of put another movie in between Pearl and X.
Sure.
There's
Hmm.
definitely room for it because I would love to see how that relationship processed after
Uh-huh.
Pearl.
Uh-huh.
You
Yeah, no,
know,
I think that would be where there's, to my knowledge, there's no talk of going beyond Maxine, but that would certainly be the place to go if that were the case, I think. But
you know what? Um, Maxine, is gonna be set in, of course, 1985, which meant the year I turned 13. Um, I gotta say, and I got no doubt it'll succeed in this because this looked like 1979. Pearl looked like 1918.
yeah.
Not that I can address that because that was before my grandparents' time,
Uh-huh.
but it looked like it. There was nothing fake or phony about the way it looked. I'm looking forward to being getting lost in the 80s
Hmm.
watching Maxine. You
Yeah.
know, I am number one, more Mia Goth, the better. I'm looking forward to seeing what she does in this, where Maxine has gone since
Hmm.
the events in X.
Hmm.
And I'm just looking forward to like I'm the music and the hair, the styles, everything,
Yeah, there's a lot of
MTV.
opportunity. There's
Yeah.
it's a rich playing field for sure. And hopefully I mean, that's the intention that we dive right into that in the same kind of way that, X or House of the Devil, So yeah, that's the hope. Hmm.
Well, you know what? And I know you're probably tight-lipped about this, and I respect that. What can you tell us about Maxine that you're allowed to share right now?
I'm not really sure because nobody's really told me like, hey, don't talk about this or don't talk about that or whatever.
Mhm.
It'll be set in LA,
Mhm.
and it stars Maxine.
Mhm.
Presumably Mia is going to be Maxine. I can't imagine it being any other way. Uh,
Mhm.
and beyond that, I don't know that I should really talk that much more. I
That
mean,
that that's
yeah,
okay. That's okay. I
yeah,
respect that.
um, yeah. Maybe I should ask people at A24 or whatever, like what I'm supposed to,
No,
how
that's okay. I
in depth I'm
respect
supposed
that
to get.
because next year it's gonna come out next year. I'm assuming.
I would imagine, like, if we get going early next year in terms of shooting it, then it would be done, I don't know what their official time frame is or if they even have one, but I would be looking for it in the fall of next year, I would imagine,
Okay. Bec-
um, about a year from now, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
It's kind of how long it takes to get a movie done. The X and Pearl thing was super unique because we just shot them back to back.
Mhm.
Um, and so them coming out so quickly one after the other is like super unusual. Um, so yeah, it'll be a little bit of time to wait for the next one.
Because I'd love to have you back on here when
Oh,
Maxine
sure.
comes out. Yeah. This has been
If
such
you
a.
like it.
Do you really think I won't? You know,
I
like,
imagine.
like I
I can
said,
say that like the script is really good, so yeah, I imagine you will enjoy it. Yes, there
look,
will
I
be.
got no doubt. I mean, maybe I'll come out and hate it, but I
Mhm.
have a feeling I'm not going to hate it.
Mhm. No,
I have a
it's gonna
feeling
be.
I'm going to like it.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
gonna right. It will satisfy in the same way that the other two movies have satisfied, I think. So.
Like I hadn't even seen House of the Devil. I got this Blu-ray just based on this.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
like I said, I've still got to look into the innkeepers and stuff. I just haven't had time to do that.
Hmm.
But that was another one I know you were involved with, is the
Yeah.
innkeepers. So,
The Innkeepers is good. In the day, like in some ways, I think there's some things about the Innkeepers that's better than House of the Devil, but House of the Devil made such a splash, it kind of
hmm
overshadowed the Innkeepers, I think. But it's kind of like an X and Pearl kind of thing. I mean, not story-wise in terms of like if only, but like the two movies kind of make a nice pair with each other.
oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Although they don't have story consistencies, they don't have like interlinked things, but the innkeepers came about because the hotel that we stayed in when we shot House of the Devil in
hmm
Connecticut, um, Ty got to talking to the people that ran that hotel. It was this old hotel called the Yankee Peddler, and they were like ghost hunter people, and like the hotel was supposed to be haunted, and a bunch of the people on the crew and stuff that were staying there had weird experiences in the room and stuff. And then Ty had this experience with one of the actors from House of the Devil, where she whipped out this crystal and did this whole thing, and that ends up. So all of these things sort of end up being in the Innkeepers, and the Innkeepers was shot at the Yankee Peddler where we stayed for House of the Devil. So it's
Okay.
all sort of tied together. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the Innkeepers is a it's a fun movie for sure, for
I'm
sure.
gonna have to give that just a shot based just the way I did House of the Devil. Because we didn't get House of the Devil in our theaters.
Oh yeah. Well, that was
Yeah.
quite a while ago at this point. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's pushing like 11 or 12 years ago or something like that. So,
X is the first movie Ty West done we got in our theater.
Uh-huh.
This was my introductory to him, and I'm like, okay, this guy's got my attention,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm all in for Maxine,
Great.
So out of these films, this is gonna be a hard one for you, but which one are you consider your biggest achievement
Wow.
in
Eh,
terms of your work?
You know, when we were shooting Pearl, I remember talking to my wife and saying, like, I think this is some of the best work I've ever done. Um, that being said, you know, I'm very proud of the work on all of the movies.
Yeah, you should be,
You know,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, but X and Pearl certainly were um, good achievements, in different ways. So I'm not really sure. I would, let's just say X and Pearl maybe are a tie.
Okay,
You know,
okay,
and I have
okay.
a big fondness for both House of the Devil and The Innkeepers, just because it was a while ago, and was the start of a really good relationship and a fun string of movies to
I'm
do.
gonna order the Innkeepers. I'm just gonna blindly do it like I did with House of the
Oh yeah,
Devil.
you
You
won't
know,
be. No, you'll enjoy it. I don't know, how it will rank amongst all of the movies, but like you'll certainly enjoy it for sure.
well, I certainly enjoyed these. Like I said, this one I saw 4 times in the theater.
That's
I
great.
am I am going to go see get Pearl when it comes out on Blu-ray.
Uh-huh.
You
Uh-huh.
know, and I gotta say, man, thank you so much for allowing me this honor today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah,
For
like
sure.
this
Thank
this
you.
is great, and I think I could probably connect you with some other podcasters that would love to have you as
Sure.
well.
I
Um,
love talking about this stuff for sure.
do
Yeah.
you ever get to do the conventions? Because I think, especially with X and Pearl, it's ripe with convention potential, whether it be yourself, Mia Goth, Jenna Ortega, you like the
I
horror film conventions are fantastic.
Uh-huh. No, I've never nobody as a director of photography, I'm definitely not high on the list of like celebrity draws. You know.
Well, you know what? You were certainly high for me because
Oh, well,
when I
thanks.
I was just shocked when you responded because I
Oh,
was
really?
like I went after you on a whim,
Oh,
what like will he respond, because I really I had Matthew Sutherland on to talk about Pearl,
uh-huh.
and I really wanted to get somebody from X as well, and I was looking through I was like, this guy was involved a lot in the way the films looked. I say, I
Uh-huh.
gotta see if he, and the fact when you responded, I was like, wow, So I think it's
Well,
a
right
big
on.
deal I got you on here.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm
Yeah.
flattered for sure. I mean, I'm just, I certainly don't make myself difficult to find. You go to my
Mhm.
website, eliotrocket.com, and there's a contact page. It's got my email. It's like,
Actually, I was
um,
just gonna bring that up
yeah.
for your social media and your contact. Plug that on here.
Oh, well, I'm not much of a social media person. I have I have two Instagram accounts. One of them that is active really, which is Eliot Rocket, and it I just post still photographs that I do on with a film camera.
Hmm.
But then my website, eliotrocket.com, is really just mostly about it's just my reels, my cinematography reels. And then I have another website, eliotrocketphotography.com, that's just still photographs. So I don't put a lot of stuff. Oh, that sounds like my wife is heading downstairs.
Well,
Maybe I
you know
should
what?
put
We're
that
going
back.
to tie this up now. I was going to ask you if you had charities that you were passionate about as well.
Oh boy. Um, that's a whole nother that's kind of out of the blue.
I always ask my guests in case there's
Uh-huh.
something they're passionate about.
Um, wow. There's several local things in Portland that we participate in, but not really like national big things so much.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? It was wonderful having you on here today. I hope you keep working with Ty West. You two seem to have a great thing going there in terms of the projects you guys are involved with. And I look forward to seeing what else you do in the future. I'm going to keep an eye on your work
Great.
because you're a master at what you do. And before I close off, I was just wondering if you do a plug for my show.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Just state your name and say you're the cinematographer and these movies, and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Okay. This is Eliot Rocket. I'm the cinematographer that's been working with Ty West on movies such as House of the Devil, X, Pearl, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert on
Python's Paradise.
Python's Paradise.
You know what? That was great. That was great. And God bless you. God bless your wife. You know, you
Thank you.
go tend to her and make her feel cherished, as I'm pretty sure you do.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you
You
today
have a
for
great
the
day.
thank you today for the honor. This was a
Yeah, thank you,
pleasure.
Greg. It was a pleasure. My
Absolutely.
pleasure, completely. All
Thank
right.
you. Yeah,
Take it easy.
you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.